Origin by Dan Brown. Prologue. As the ancient cogwheel train clawed its way up the dazzling incline, Edward Gray surveyed the jagged mountain top above him. In the distance, built into the face of a sheer cliff, the massive stone monastery seemed to hang in space, as if magically fused to vertical precipice. This timeless sanctuary in Catalonia, Spain, had endured the relentless pull of gravity for more than 4 centuries, never slipping from its original purpose to insulate its occupant from the modern world. Ironically, they will now be the first to learn the truth. Cursed dog, wondering how they would react. Historically, the most dangerous men were men of God, especially when their gods become threatened, and I am about to hurl a flaming spear into a hornet's nest. When the train reached the mountain top, Chris saw a solitary figure waiting for him on the platform. The wizened skeleton of a man who was draped in the traditional Catholic purple cassock and white rocket, with a Zuzetto on his head. Chris recognized his host's raw-boned features from photos and felt an unexpected surge of adrenaline. Valdespino is greeting me personally. Bishop Antonio Valdespino was a formidable figure in Spain, not only a trusted friend and counselor to the king himself, but one of the country's most vocal and influential advocates for the preservation of conservative Catholic values and traditional political standards. At Mercury's, I assume, the bishop intoned as Curse excited the train. Guilty as charged, Curse said, smiling as he reached out to shake his host's bony hand. Bishop Valespina, I want to thank you for arranging this meeting. I appreciate your requesting it. The bishop's voice was stronger than Chris expected, clear and penetrating like a bell. It is not often we are consulted by men of science, especially one of your prominence. This was this way. This way, please. As Valdespino guided Chris across the platform, the cold mountain air wiped, wiped at the bishop's cassocks. I must confess, Valdespino said, you look different than I imagined. I was expecting a scientist, but you are quite. He eyed his guest like it on K50 suit and Barker of stage with a hint of disdain. Hip, I believe, is the word. Kurt smiled politely. The word hip went out of style decades ago. In reading your list of accomplishments, the bishop said, I am still not entirely sure what it is you do. I specialize in game theory and computer modeling. So you make the computer games that the children play? Kira sensed the bishop was feigning ignorance in an attempt to be kind. More accurately, Chris knew Valdespino was frighteningly well-informed student of technology and often warned others of its dangers. No, sir. Actually, game theory is a field of mathematics that studies patterns in order to make predictions about the future. Ah, yes, I believe I read that you predicted a European monetary crisis some years ago. When nobody listened, you saved the day by inventing a computer program that pulled the European back from the dead. What was your famous quote? At 33 years old, I am the same age as Christ when he performed his resurrection. Christ grinned. A poor analogy of grace. I was young. Young? The bishop chuckled. And how old are you now? Perhaps 40. Just. The old man smiled as the strong wind continued to blow his robe. Well, the meek were supposed to inherit the earth, but instead it has gone to the young, the technically inclined, those who stare into video screens rather than into their own souls. I must admit I never imagined I would have reason to meet the young man leading the charge. They call you a prophet, you know. Not a very good one in your case, your grace, Chris replied. When I asked if I might meet you and your colleagues privately, I calculated only a 20% chance you would accept. And as I thought, my colleagues. The devout can always benefit from listening to non-believers. It is in hearing the voice of devil that we can better appreciate the voice of God. The old man smiled. I am joking, of course. Please forgive my aging sense of humor. My filters fail me from time to time. With that, Bishop Alispina mentioned ahead. The others are waiting. This way, please. Chris eyed their destination. A colossal citadel of grey stone perched on the edge of a sheer cliff that flung thousands of feet down into the lush tapestry of wooden foothills. Unnerved by the height, Chris averted his eyes from the Johnson and followed the bishop along the uneven cliffside path, turning his thoughts to the meeting ahead. Cursor requested an audience with three prominent religious leaders who had just finished attending a conference here. The Parliament of the Worst Religious. Since 1893, hundreds of spiritual leaders from nearly 30 world regions had gathered in a different location every few years to spend a week engaged in interfaith dialogue. Participants included a wide array of influential Christian priests, Jewish rabbis, and Islamic mullahs from around the world, along with Hindu pujaris, Buddhists, bhikshus, Jains, Sikhs, and others. The parliament's self-proclaimed objective was to cultivate harmony among world's religions, build bridges between diverse spiritualities, and celebrate the intersection of all faith. A novel courage story, despite seeing it as an empty exercise, a meaningless search for random points of correspondence among a hodgepodge of ancient fictions, fables, and myths. As Philosopher guided him along the path to Aquarius, Viardant the moonset, with the sardonic thought, Moses climbed a mountain to accept the word of God, and Hype climbed a mountain to do quite the opposite. Chris' motivation for climbing this mountain, he had taught himself, was one of ethical obligation, but he knew there was a good dose of hubris. Following his visit, he was eager to feel the gratification of sitting face to face with these clerics and foretelling their Humanian demise. You've had your run at defining our truth. I look at your curriculum vitae. The bishop said absolutely. Glancing at Curse, I see you're a product of Harvard University. Undergraduate, yes. I see. Suddenly that for the first time in Harvard's history, the incoming student body consists of more atheists and agnostic than those who identify as followers of any religion. That is quite a telling statistic, Mr. Kurtz. What I can tell you, Chris wanted to reply, our students keep getting smarter. The wind be very harder as they arrive at the ancient stone edifice. Inside the dim light of the building's entryway, the air was heavy with the thick fragrance of burning frankincense. The two men sneaked through a maze of dark corridors, and Chris' eyes fell to adjust as they followed his clerk's house. Finally, they arrived at an unusually small wooden door. The bishop knocked the door and entered, motioning for his guests to follow. Uncertain, Chris stepped over the threshold. He found himself in a rectangular chamber whose height was begun with ancient leather-bound tomes, additional freestanding bookshelves jutted out of the walls like ribs, interspersed with cast iron radiators, they chanced and hissed, giving the room the eerie sense that it was alive. Chris raised his eyes to the ornately balustrated walkway that encircled the second story, and knew without a doubt where he was. The famed library of Montserrat, he realized, startled to have been admitted. The sacred room was rumored to contain uniquely rare texts, accessible only to these monks who had devoted their lives to God and who were sequestered here on this mountain. You asked for a discretion, the bishop said. This is our most private space. Few outsiders have ever entered. A generous privilege. Thank you. Curtis followed the bishop to a large wooden table where two elderly men sat waiting. The man on the left looked time-worn, with tired eyes and a matted white beard. He wore a crown-back suit, white shirt, and fedora. This is Rabbi Yehuda Kautz, the bishop said. He is a prominent Jewish philosopher who has written extensively on Kabbalistic cosmology. Chris reached across the table and politely shook hands with Robbie Cobbs. "A pleasure to meet you, sir," he said. "I've read your books on Kabbalah. I can't say I understood them, but I've read them." Gus gave an amenable nod, dabbing at his watery eyes with his handkerchief. "And here," the bishop continued, motioning to the other man, "you have the respected alum, Said Al-Fad." The father Islamic scholar stood up and smiled broadly. He was short and quite square, with a jovial face that seemed mismatched with his dark, penetrating eyes. He was dressed in an unassuming white tawab. And Mr. Critch, I have read your prediction on the future of mankind. I can't say I agree with them, but I have read them." Chris gave a gracious smile and shook the man's hand. "And our guest, Edmund Chris," the bishop concluded, addressing his two colleagues, "is a highly regarded computer scientist, game theorist, inventor, and something of a prophet in the technological world. Considering his background, I was puzzled by his request to address the three of us. Therefore, I shall now leave it to Mr. Curtis to explain why he has come." With that, Mr. Valdesmino took a seat between his two colleagues, folded his hands, and gazed up expectantly at Curtis. All three men faced him like a tribunal, creating an ambience more like that of an inquisition than a friendly meeting of scholars. The bishop, Curtis now realized, had not even set out a chair for him. Curtis felt more bemused than intimidated as he studied the three aging men before him. "So this is the Holy Trinity I require," said the three wise men. Pausing a moment to assert his power, Chris walked over to the window and gazed out at the breathtaking panorama below. A sunlit patchwork of ancient pastoral lands stretched across a deep valley, giving way to the rugged peaks of the Calzorella mountain range. Miles beyond, somewhere out over the Baltic Sea, a menacing bank of storm clouds was now gathering on the horizon. Fitting Chris thought, sensing the turbulence he would soon cause in his room and in the world beyond. "Gentlemen," he commented, turning abruptly back toward him, "I believe Bishop Palespino has already confined you to my request for secrecy. Before we continue, I just want to clarify that what I am about to share with you must be kept in the strict confidence. Simply stated, I am asking for a vote of silence from all of you. Are we in agreement? All three men gave nods of tacit acquiescence. What Chris knew were probably redundant anyway, that we want to bury this information, not broadcast it. "I'm here today," Chris began, "because I have made a scientific discovery I believe you will find startling. It is something I have pursued for many years, hoping to provide answer to two of the most fundamental questions of our human experience. Now that I have succeeded, I have come to you specifically because I believe this information will affect the world's faithful in a profound way, quite possibly causing a shift that can only be described as, shall we say, destructive. At the moment, I am the only person on earth who has the information I am about to reveal to you." Chris reached into his suit coat and pulled out an oversized smartphone. On that, he had designed and built to serve his own unique needs. The phone had a vibrantly colored mosaic case, and he propped it up before the three men like a television. In a moment, he would use the device to dial into an ultra-secure server. Enter his 47-character password and live stream a presentation for them. "What you are about to see," Kate said, "is a rough cut of an announcement I have to share with the world, perhaps in a month or so. But before I do, I wanted to consult with a few of the world's most influential religious thinkers to gain insight into how this news will be received by those it affects most." The bishop sighed loudly, sounding more bored than concerned. An interrogating preamble, Mr. Critch. You speak as if Whatever you are about to show us will shake the foundation of the world's religions. Chris glanced around the ancient repository of sacred texts. It will not shake your foundation, it will shatter them. Chris appraised the men before him. What they did not know was that in only 3 days' time, Chris planned to go public with this presentation in a stunning, meticulously choreographed event. When he did, people across the world would realize that the teaching of all religions did indeed have one thing in common: they were all dead wrong.